Right now, we all love a game where there's different ways to play and different outcomes at the end. However, this isn't a recent development. Some classic NES games from the 8-bit era feature endings players may not have known about. Today, we're going to tell you about some of them. If this is your first time visiting us, then make sure you like this video, subscribe to The Gamer, and ring that bell to become a member of our notification squad so you never miss a video. Without further ado, here are some Nintendo game endings you never knew about. Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. Some games are important because they were the first time a particular team of developers got together. Some games are important because they helped kickstart one particular console success story. However, some games are important because they helped to create an entire genre of games. One of the games which falls into the latter category is the NES classic Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. While the first Castlevania game was loads of fun, the sequel was what helped it become a byword for a specific sort of game. The open-ended style of play and storyline, mixed in with some challenging platform action, made it one half of the Metroidvania genre. You had to have great timing and keep your wits about you if you wanted to rid Transylvania of Dracula. However, even if you were skilled enough to complete it, you may not have been skilled enough to get the coolest ending. Even if you were able to complete the rather challenging game, even by the standards of its time, in less than 7 game days, and you managed to do it without using continues, you got an awesome finish to the game as a reward, which, considering how much of a challenge the game was, only seems fair. Once you killed Dracula, you got a message about how Simon Belmont's blood and sweat had penetrated the Transylvanian soil, meaning those who walked on it would experience happiness. Then, you'd see Dracula's hand shooting up from the grave. Proper classic, we'd say. Contra. Back in the days before online gaming meant hackers could ruin pretty much everything, there were cheats actually built into games. That's right. One of the most ubiquitous and infamous cheats was the so-called Konami code. One of the games most famous for having this code was the extremely difficult 1987 NES run-and-gun platform shoot-'em-up, Contra. Hitting the Konami code gave you 30 lives rather than 3, which meant you had a fighting chance. However, if you managed to play the Japanese version of the game, there was more fun to come if you could actually beat the game, that is. Once you managed to defeat the final boss, you had to hit start and select at the same time. This would let you know that you hadn't actually killed Red Falcon. In fact, it turned out Red Falcon was immortal and his enemies were ready to continue fighting for him. If nothing else, this got the ball rolling for the game's sequel, which came out in 1990, Duck Hunt. While Nintendo is seen as being a company which gives you the best things straight out of the box with the system, that doesn't mean they don't do peripheral accessories. Perhaps the first and probably the most notorious one of these was the Zapper light gun. While there's a belief this was never entirely essential, it's still pretty much iconic, giving 80s gamers the chance to play shooting games like they could in the arcade. Out of all the games made to be compatible with the Zapper, perhaps the most famous is Duck Hunt. Heck, it was even bundled in with the NES in some instances alongside Super Mario Bros. Anyway, in case you haven't played it, it's pretty straightforward. As the name suggests, you use the Zapper to shoot ducks as they fly across the screen, and well, that's it. There were 99 progressively harder levels, and while it looked like there wasn't an end to the game as such, if you used the Game Genie cheat cartridge, you could discover one. When you finished level 99, the Game Genie took you to level 0, where you couldn't target your Zapper, let alone fire it at the ducks, and you'd get a game over screen pretty quickly. If nothing else, you'd also see your canine companion laugh at you. It doesn't really sound like anything spectacular, but it was an ending people didn't know about. Rambo. One of the hardest things to do is create a classic game based on a movie. It's all too easy to rely on the licensing of characters and scenarios rather than come up with a game which is distinctive and memorable in and of itself. However, Nintendo players who've been there a long time will have managed to see it done twice, with Jurassic Park for the SNES and, of course, GoldenEye on the N64 being warmly remembered by gamers. However, before the 90s, there was the 80s. And during that particular decade, the big movie genre was the uber-violent, blood-splattered action film. Perhaps no movie summed up that genre better than Rambo: First Blood Part 2, starring Sylvester Stallone. This film was such a big deal, it was kind of inevitable someone would end up making a game based on it. In 1987, Rambo appeared for the NES, courtesy of Pack-In Video and Acclaim, and to this day, it still attracts controversy. Whether or not the game owes rather too much to Zelda 2: The Adventures of Link, and whether that really matters, has been debated long and hard ever since the game was released. However, what hasn't attracted quite so much attention is the secret ending. If you skip an interaction with John Rambo's love interest, Ko Bao, she doesn't die. Okay, this isn't what happens in the film, but doing so and entering a code means there's going to be a happy, almost peaceful ending to the game. This was something a lot of gamers at the time either didn't know about or stumbled upon by accident. DuckTales. If you ask anyone who grew up in the 80s and 90s about DuckTales, they'll tell you all about the classic Disney animation, which told the tales of wealthy Scrooge McDuck and his nephews Huey, Dewey, and Louie. More to the point, there's a decent chance they'll sing you the absolutely brilliant theme song. Woohoo! However, those who were in the know will also point you in the direction of a classic and somewhat underappreciated Nintendo game. It was challenging, but unlike some of the games we're going to talk about today, it wasn't insanely difficult. You were, for once, in with a chance. If you took that chance, then at the end of the game, you'd find a treasure chest filled with the loot you'd managed to win while playing the game. There were, however, not one, but two secret endings for skilled players. The first was one you'd find if you completed the game with more than $10 million. You'd see a big pile of gold, complete with some of the goodies Scrooge had earned throughout the game. However, if you managed to do it but conspired to lose all of your money by swapping it for extra lives, you'd have a downbeat but oddly satisfying super secret ending with Scrooge determined to win back his fortune and once again be the world's richest duck. We aren't sure why it was there. Maybe there was a gameplay strand that Capcom decided to axe. Either way, it was a good ending. Ghosts and Goblins. Nowadays, it isn't all that difficult to finish a game. Sure, it's a challenge to grab yourself the fabled 100% completion statistic, but getting to the end of the main story is usually something which, while it may require some patience, can be done by a reasonably skilled gamer. However, it wasn't always like this. Video games used to be highly frustrating and fiendishly difficult. And there's a term for this: Nintendo hard. There were two reasons why games were harder back in the 80s. Firstly, games were often ports of arcade games. If you wanted people to spend money on your game, you won't want to make things too easy for them. Secondly, game cartridges weren't able to store a large amount of data, so you really wanted to give people good value for their money if they were paying top dollar. Anyway, one of the best or worst examples of Nintendo hard there's ever been was Ghosts and Goblins. This was a medieval-themed platformer with Sir Arthur trying to rescue Princess Prin Prin from a host of zombies, demons, dragons, ghosts, and of course, goblins, sent by Satan himself. However, you could only take 2 hits before you die, or you'd get an extra life, but it would only be applicable for a short period of time. When you battled through hell and defeated Satan, you'd feel really pleased. Only a message would pop up saying that you'd been deceived and you had to go through the whole game again. Maniac Mansion. Some games you play through once, maybe twice, before putting them back on the shelf. Some games are so good though that you'll play them again and again, experiencing their world and discovering their secrets. Other games are the type that you'll keep going back to just because you'll want to get your money's worth. Maniac Mansion was, quite literally, one of those games. That's because when it came out in 1990, it was the most expensive game for the NES. It was a port of a computer game, and it was actually very clever, even if it cost nearly twice as much as other new NES games, which may have limited its appeal. In fairness to Maniac Mansion, its point-and-click-based adventure gameplay was a little bit ahead of its time and allowed for a variety of different paths through the game, which in turn led to a variety of different outcomes. Probably the rarest ending was also the craziest one. Finishing the game in one storyline involved dealing with a meteor that was actually evil. You could persuade it to give up its villainous ways by offering it a book contract. If you did that, then the meteor would end up going onto Wink Smiley's talk show to tell the world how it gave up its previous life of crime. Except his wrongdoings were so serious, he'd be arrested live on TV. Metroid. Some video games have gone and broken the mold. Whether it's Super Mario Bros., Grand Theft Auto 3, or Fortnite Battle Royale, there are games which redesigned and redefined what could be done in gaming. However, there are also characters who've made people reassess what a video game hero can be. High up on that list is the protagonist of Nintendo's Metroid franchise, Samus Aran. Now, it's pretty well known that the main ending of the first Metroid game was a real eye-opening moment when it was revealed that the alien killer was a woman. Samus' gender was revealed at the end of the game, if you ever managed to get there, that is. Now, you discovering Samus' true gender all depended on how long it took you to finish the game. If you took more than 10 hours, which in fairness is what happened to a lot of gamers the first time they played it, she'd stand on the planet Zebus with her face turned away, looking pretty dejected. However, if you beat the game in under 5 hours, you would get to see her face. If you managed to be good enough to do it in between 3 to 5 hours, you'd see her hair. Between 1 and 3, she'd be wearing a swimsuit. And if you somehow managed to do it in less than 1 hour, she was in a bikini. As sexist as it sounds, they were different times back then. And to be honest, we're kind of grateful we don't live in them. And that is all for today's video. We hope you enjoyed it. What's your favorite Nintendo secret ending? Did we leave any good ones out? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to The Gamer for more videos just like this one.